Ahojte, tretiaci, a pozdravujem tretiu B v pondelok a tretiu C v piatok. Ja sa vám prihováram znovu z nahratej hodiny, dopredu nahratej hodiny, aj z toho dôvodu, že v pondelok absolvujem očkovanie a neviem, v akom stave budem, ale zdá sa, že to nebude žiadny problém pre vás. Týmto vás chcem hneď aj upozorniť, že nezabudnite tradične na otázku, ktorú som vám zavesil aj v popise videa. Ja to nahrávam v nedeľu, čiže už vám po, ale predpokladám, že sa vás budem pýtať asi na formu týchto hodín, či vám vyhovuje a niečo takéto možno. Dobre, ešte uvidím samozrejme, takže odpovedajte v komentároch. Samozrejme, aj keby som mal horúče očky a hlavičku a všetky tieto mužské smrteľné choroby na 8 písmen, tak ja vám to kontrolujem a samozrejme odpovedám a lajkujem a tak ďalej. Čiže takto si robíme absenciu. No my pôjdeme dnes ďalej, nebudem to naťahovať. Minulú hodinu, keď sme si prešli Osmanskú ríšu, tak som sa zakecal. Predpokladám, že zakecam sa aj dnes, pretože máme veľkú tému. No nie veľkú tému obsahovo, ale veľkú tému, čo sa týka historického nejakého dopadu, či nejaký impact of the Renaissance and Humanism. Dobre, je to prezentácia, ktorú máte zavesenú, nie je veľmi upravená, takže dnes sa ľahko dostanete. Avšak, ako ste si už viacerí asi aj všimli, tak v zadaní, ktoré teda máte robiť, tak je to pomerne málo úloh, ale sú dosť veľké a oproti tej prezentácii máte niekoľko rozdielov, že som vám doplnil pár otázok, napríklad some features of Renaissance art, čiže máte tam nejaké veci, ktoré ja vyslovene napríklad o theater alebo music vôbec nebudem hovoriť, čiže musíte si o tom nájsť nejaké informácie, musíte si to vyhľadať. Samozrejme nezabudnite všade dávať zdroje, keď budem vidieť, že máte nejakú informáciu, okamžite treba dať zdroj, keď nemáte, ja vám stiahujem 5-10% dole, to tu už viete všetci. No, viete aj sami podľa tých posledných skúseností z Uhorska, že ako kopírujete od spolužiakov všetko, bez toho, aby ste si to overili, tak budete ako naši politici, ktorí kopírovali svoje práce a potom na hanbu sveta potom máte hanbu, že kopírujete v podstate niekedy chybu alebo blbosť. Takže na to sme na tejto škole, aby ste sa niečo naučili a hlavne vy, aby ste sa niečo naučili nové, ako fungovať. A práve táto téma je výborná. Preto aj celý zoznam osobností som vám sem hodil, ktorý je podstatne väčší ako na konci prezentácie. A z nejaké osobnosti, ktoré tam napríklad som možno nespomínal, alebo by tam boli. Ja by som možno doplnil ešte viacej, ale myslím, že na dejepis nám to bude stačiť. Takže toto by mali byť také hlavné veci. No rovnako vec, ktorú ja vôbec nebudem vám ukazovať, táto prezentácia by si zaslúžila ešte viacej vizuálneho materiálu, obrázkov a tak. Teraz som si uvedomil, že som mohol ešte aj prihodiť nejaké obrázky spred nejakých 12 rokov, keď som ešte učil estetickú výchovu, čo je umenia kultúra starej verzii a v podstate 2 hodiny, dvojhodinovku povinného predmetu, ale neklasifikovaného predmetu. Znúdení moji študenti, ešte sme mali aj 8-ročné gymnázium z Quinty, museli 5., 6., 7. hodinu počúvať o renesancii, tak som im nahádzal aj 300 obrázkov, ale sme si prechádzali obrazy a sochy a na konci tej hodiny normálne, že zatlieskali, takže nezaspali, ale naopak. Od vás chcem, tak ako možno niektorí si spomínate, a dúfam, že všetci, na gotiku a románsky sloh, čiže podobnú aktivitku, ale oveľa jednoduchšie som vám napísal sem, bez obrázkov, ale myslím, že budete vidieť ten pekný rozdiel. Dobre, už dlho rozprávam, takže poďme na samotnú prezentáciu, ja si občas pozriem, že ako ja rozprávam. Dobre, takže máme 56 minút presne, takže poďme na to. Of course, presentation will be held in English, so don't worry about this. Renaissance and Humanism, very often, even like watching videos, let's say by John Green, the links are in the end of the presentation, and it's really worth it to watch it. I didn't give you any assignment with the videos because many of you were complaining about like you have to watch it and so on. So only those who want, so you can watch it, and it's fine. It's easy to spot, but you can just check it out from the video. Okay. There are two, still they call it with one name, Renaissance. It's really like simplified name for both because there should be two things and will make a difference just like you have in assignment. So humanism is not Renaissance, but they're closely connected and will explain the difference. Also the periodization, from, like, let's say late Middle Ages, especially in Italy and Germany and Netherlands, for example, and by 1600s, which is approximately years when Renaissance and maybe Humanism, more things came among, like, general many people, because, let's say, here in Eastern Europe, in the Kingdom of Hungary, we had already Matthias Corvinus, his wife Beatrice of Aragon. She brought these many Renaissance artists, and there were, like, schools being established, like Academia Istropolitana. And what happened? What happened was that um, it took some time. It took some time when people start to accept it, and because of religious wars in the 16th century, it lasted many years. So this is period 1600s, let's say 1650s, when Jan Amos Komenský, John Amos Comenius, his books were being already printed in Levoča, in Banská Štiavnica, Banská Bystrica, and we were being spread in at schools. And this is a very important thing, because thanks to schools, Renaissance as art and humanism as philosophy was spread among the people, and it had some effect. Just like John Green was hesitating in his video whether it really happened. It did, but it took some time. Of course, you got some books in here, but let's move on. Body of these things started in Italy. Despite another John Green's video says that in, like, Germany and France, people had already known many of the stuff, but the point was that Italy is supposed to be the cradle of the emergence of Renaissance and Humanism. Why in Italy? We didn't mention it. We haven't mentioned it since maybe times of Papal State and the Kingdom of Sicily, but not, like, their history. So what was the thing? Still in 15th or 14th century, Italy was pretty, like, urbanized area. What does it mean? Urban, it means town. So it means that in Italian peninsula, in the Apennine Peninsula, there were many big states that were actually towns, only with their surroundings. So we can talk about these city-states, and still they were powerful, like, high population. So it was really like towns environment, not like villages like in our lands. In these towns, Roman heritage were present everywhere. So even in Ferrara, in Rome, of course, in Ravenna, in Naples, you just got out and you found, like, Roman columns and pillars and temples of ancient and highly developed antiquity of Roman Empire and Greek Hellenistic empires and so on. So in this way, people had it every day. The other thing is that Italy was not a single kingdom. You know that we, as I mentioned, this kingdom of Napoli, or kingdom of two Sicilies in the south, it was a big one. The other very important and big was the papal state in the center, but especially in the north, there were actually a lot of these city-states. Some of them were republics, and this is interesting thing. Why republic? Of Florence, for example, also Genoa, Jano, Florencia, samozrejme. Milan, it's archduchy, and Venice, it was also republic. So you see, somehow these medieval states, despite we had kingdoms everywhere, so these city-states that were actually pretty powerful thanks to their navy and things and position, like geographical position, they could defend and against, let's say, Holy Roman Empire, or against the Pope, or against France again. And they had chance to create their own form of government that was for them, like, logical, like historical, like this Roman Republic style. So in this way, like, towns like Florence, or let's say Venice, created, like, in 9th 10th century AD, of course, Genoa in the same period, like 9th 10th century, again Florence in approximately 11th century, and they proclaimed that their city is outside of the power of the Emperor of Holy Roman Empire, or of the King of France, or the Pope, and they elected their mayors, čiže richtárov. And they, for example, in Venice, they called doja, and these guys were given power just like consuls. Even they carried many of the symbols of this Roman ancient antique republic. So this is really interesting. And these places, these city republics, were actually very attractive for many people for trade, for merchants to come. They established universities as a very important feature of medieval culture. And in Bologna, there was the oldest university in the world, and it was attracting many people. So, and for that reason, many of these guys became rich, and thus money attracts more people and artists too. So this is how Italy looked like, of course. So this is the kingdom of Naples, a bit bigger. Later on, it was conquered by Spain and later by France. Papal state still like very big, much bigger than Slovakia. For example, we mentioned Venice. It was not only this town and stinking sewers on the islands near Venice, but it had like these all territories around and many islands in deep in Mediterranean Sea and very wealthy thanks to trade with Asia. And if you remember, during Crusades, Venetians were providing almost all naval transportation for crusades, and thus these Italian guys got into touch with Arabic, Greek, Byzantine culture that preserved many of these antique philosophies or knowledge about medicine, astronomy, and so on. So that was another reason why it happened in Italy. The other kingdom, Genoa, for example, Republic, Florence, very important for us, as you probably all know. But even many of them, Siena, Ferrara, Modena, Mantua, even Archduchy of Milan, the Principality of Savoy around Turin, and even popes, especially those infamous popes of Borgia family, became big donators and supporters of the ideas of humanism and Renaissance. That is really important. Okay, you don't see this, and I don't know why it doesn't work. This tab, I'm just clicking. I can read it for you. So behind my behind my picture, there is like a quote. It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out, and they happened to the things. Leonardo da Vinci. So this is in well, like nice quote that even graduates from history had to analyze like what is the point. And let's actually analyze it more. Of course there are a lot of notes, so I just read it, maybe explain something. So as I told you, this many of these city states, they had this Roman heritage. So during their history they created this institution of free royal towns, and just like we know from our kingdom of Hungary, this kind of like town's democracy and republican government was easy to do in these polis, Greek polis, or in the city states. And they created and defended this republican government. And of course, it provided and it was ruled not by like common people, not like poor guys or peasants coming to the town immediately had freedom. No, only people who had money. They were burghers, mešťania, or merchants. Usually in Italy, they were guys who were trading between Asia and Africa and colonies of the New World later on, and so on. These merchants, they got wealthy from trade with Asia, especially since the Crusades. And of course, this provided excellent opportunities for trade and startup projects for them that involve trade and crafts in towns themselves. So that's why in Florence, Genoa, Venice, there are also many people who are producing jewelry, weapons, clocks, like naval navigation. Navigational appliances like astrolabe maps, for example. There were people who were actually processing jewelry, for example, gold. Of course, they were tailors who made excellent, beautiful clothes and processed silk from Asia and sold it later on to further Europe. So all of these crafts make them that they really changed. These guys changed their own destinies. Sometimes, like Marco Polo, he was like a poor man living in Venice, and thanks to trade and the knowledge he gained during his lifetime, it made him very famous, and it really dramatically changed the things that were happening in the world. So they started to realize one thing: not the God, but the humans and their knowledge, humans' knowledge, but also their labor, hard labor, changed their destiny znamená osud, and future. So it was very contradictory, čiže také protirečivé to bolo. It was contradiction to medieval fatality. Fatal, it means osudový, that you have one road to go, and the God said it. You were born as a peasant, you'll be the peasant. You were born in royal family, you must be the king, for example. No, if you work hard, if you study hard, you can change the situation you live in, and your family, your town, your neighborhood, your state, and so on. And this is dramatic change according to Middle Ages. Also, how the church in Middle Ages explained the world, that there are this pyramid that we had to analyze, we had to draw these things. So you can actually switch, because it doesn't matter that you are like aristocratic blue-blooded guy, vampire living in Venice, like discover the Vinci's TV series. No, it's completely different, because if you work hard, you can like rise up in the pyramid of hierarchy of society, of early modern society. If you are lazy, you just fall down. It doesn't mean that you have a good name, that you cannot ruin it. You don't develop your parents and your family's properties. Okay, so many people had to work on, live on, and gather wealth. Of course, when you have a lot of money, usually you would like to waste it, on such useless things as music and t-shirts, Pearl Jam t-shirt, or I don't know, TV and so on, and culture. And at that time, theater, literature, music, clothes, architecture, and these new ideas coming that you can change it. Usually, they were being and they are being expressed, and this is what you had in art and culture, that. What do you know, what you see, how you see the world. So you should probably depict it in the way how you produce art in this way, or how you support art. So that means that as a patron, it means guy who protects you. Patronus. Harry Potter. There was somebody who protected you, who gave you money, gave you protection. And in this way, those people just gave protection and money to artists who expressed their artistic way of the new ideas that appeared in these times. So in this way, these new ideas in art and also knowledge express the new point of view of the world. In art, this new expression is called the Renaissance, with a double S, and as a new way of thinking, especially in philosophy, in scholarship, čiže také ako vzdelávanie, veda, and also in sciences, čiže vo vedách, it is called humanism. So that's why we have two things: Renaissance as art and humanism as philosophy. Okay, let's explain them. So let's start with Renaissance. What does it mean? It's French word, not Italian, and those who speak French parlent français. Naissance is to give birth. Renaissance is to give birth again, or reborn something, to give birth to something again. And what was symbolical, because thanks to Crusades and discoveries in Arabic and Byzantine scripts, they realized that these ideas that you can change your individual fate and destiny did not depend on the god. Even gods may be lame, or I don't know, cruel, whatever, but it's upon you that you can change your destiny. It had been there before, and it was in antiquity, in ancient Greece, in ancient Rome. So that's why for them, France to start to call this artistic expression, as you will see, that we had it like when like antiquity was born. Then we had this dark period in Renaissance, in humanism. In this period, they start to realize the difference between Middle Ages and the previous great golden light age of knowledge, and so on. And suddenly we have something similar, because people start to use the same methods and techniques in arts, fine arts, in drawing, in sciences, and change their destiny, just like it was in ancient Greece and Rome. So that's why they start to call it is Renaissance. It is rebirth of antiquity for them. They didn't see it as something brand new, because at the beginning that was just making copies and rediscovering znovu objavovanie, something that ancient Greeks had already known. But it was forgotten, just like in the movie that I recommended you a couple of times, The Name of the Rose, where many things by Aristotle, Plato were not being allowed to read. Of course, many of them were, thanks to Thomas of Aquinas, but not many of them. So Renaissance actually moved to be like cultural movement. So a lot of people, it was not organization, it was not a kingdom, whatever. It was not a one school, but it was a whole movement that many artists and people working with culture start to accept those new ideas. Those ideas were actually based upon this learning, based upon knowledge from classical Greece and Rome. As you will see, there will be many things that not only like ancient gods and goddesses, but it will be upon mathematics, upon biology, naturalism, and so on. Okay, roughly period, I told you 1350s, actually in Florence it had been there before, and 1650s, for example. It is sometimes very difficult to set, especially in sciences and humanistic scholarship, make a distinction between Baroque that came later in art, but still Baroque respected many things from Renaissance. Beginning in Florence, Italy, and other towns around in these northern Italian city republics, and spread it to the rest of Europe during late Middle Ages, just like Matthias Corvinus arcing in here. And of course, many people see it, and even historians today, we agree upon one of the milestones between Middle Ages and this modern era, čiže medzi stredovekom a novovekom. This is kind of a bridge, intellectual transformation. You got an idea, you realize something, and you change. You change yourself, and then you change environment, starting up new period. And this is really what Renaissance and Humanism brought. There was huge influence upon literature. You got many books from Decameron of Giovanni Boccaccio, which is actually interesting because we are even now living in the times of epidemic. And Decameron, famous book of short stories. From late Middle Ages from Italy was written in the times of plague epidemic when like rich burghers were closed in quarantine and they got bored. So of course they start telling like funny stories, and because there was no church and the Inquisition watching, listening to them, so they were not afraid and start to express this new thing that we die nevertheless if you pray or not, just sickness comes. They're not lucky for vaccination as I do have like today or like 4 days ago, and we just need to live today for today. In Latin it's called carpe diem, enjoy the days, because when you have memento mori, the moment of that shows you that you shall not live forever. So you have to spend your days like it would be the last day, and you have to enjoy it, not to kill and rape and steal, no, but to make a clear mind, coming something that Buddhism was calling or something like that. And they start telling stories that were like funny adventures of like wives and cheating husband and whatever, and it was brand new thing, like open to the people, to common people, not about the gods and heroic acts of knights and so on. So suddenly literature changed a lot. And in Middle Ages we had this like werewolf and songs, heroic songs. But then suddenly we had like even in Daniel Defoe, that is actually much later, but like common guy, sailor, Robinson Crusoe, shipwrecking. It was not a king, he was not a hero, blessed by God. No, so that was very interesting how it changed. In philosophies, we have all this humanistic philosophy that is introducing us, and especially influencing many other philosophies to come later on, with Mr. Hallan, of course. In art, you had lessons with art and culture with Mr. Winter, with Miss Kratochvílová, Mrs. Kratochvílová, and you will see many examples. Okay, in politics, I'll come to this point in the end because it changed a lot. Because sometimes even a T-shirt or a building, the style you make, it promotes some of these ideas. You just like spread it among the others, and then people start to change and think, okay, but so what if we have these like bad kings and lazy kings, the Kral Dobře of Jagiellonian? So let's change it. It didn't happen in our lands because we had this absolutism monarchy, but in Netherlands it did. In England it changed a lot, and even later in times of Enlightenment after it, the emperor's kings had to accept some parliaments that limited their power, just like it was in medieval England already. Okay, so it had been there before. Sciences, it was whole dramatic change, as suddenly you have the Bible and nothing else, and philosophies, and suddenly you can count mathematics, geography, you can like knowing biology, anatomy. You had a whole bunch of physicists to physicians, people who start to introduce like logical thinking, philosophy, Greek philosophy in here. Later on in Enlightenment or Science, they start to analyze it in so-called like hypothetical methods. So you have hypothesis in your project work, and in the end synthesis. It was said based upon humanistic philosophy from later on Enlightenment period. So very important. And of course, that makes you probably hesitate whether God is like the church says. So some of these people start to read Bible in originals, in Greek, in Latin, and just like Erasmus of Rotterdam or Jan Hus. They start to read it, analyze. Come on, this is something different that church and papal state promotes a holy seat. So they start to make reforms in religion too, and this is how Reformation started. That will be another topic after this. Of course, many other aspects of intellectual inquiry, čiže ako celého toho volume, ktorý máte, toho lore, či vedomosti, ktoré máte. So what it appeared, for example, in art, they started with realistic depiction of humans. It was not like in the Middle Ages, only tombstones where there was a king lying still, like ancient Egypt. Suddenly these people start to move and be realistic, as in ancient Greece or Rome. Scholars employ this new way of thinking with humanist method. Humanistic method is the way. What is the subject of matter of our study? And we have to try to look for the truth. Not only like that what we want to be true, like the God exists. My political system works and not the others. These guys were evil in our history. No, that's not true. You have to check it out. You have to have all the methods, systems that I explained at the beginning of history. And it started here in Humanism and Renaissance. That's why I told you it's a big topic. Realism and human emotion in art, and of course, it emphasized then individualism, that even you yourself, you are important, okay? And individual talents that we need to develop at schools for you. Okay, you may find it's useless for me, but it's upon you if you take it or not, if you accept it, if you apply it, if you concern only on physics, or if you apply even informatics in there, or history, if you don't care about French language and I don't know German, and then later on you may realize like you missed something. Okay, as humanism, this new way of thinking, so main interest was in achievement of man. So this was this development of individualism and individual talents. In this way, applying these values, humanist values, were based upon the evolution of you as a guy who is excellent in many sciences and great knowledge, and you have some virtues. It means some good character traits you have, and also how you behave. And it's not only about yourself, like this individualism only, but it's important also to bring this to the improvement of public virtue too. So it's useless when I'm the only one who is wise and clever historian. I want to give it to you so you can be also clever guys, people of Renaissance as we call it. So it means that you know many things and you can pick out what to do with your destiny, with your future, with your life. But again, if you take it, leave it only for yourself, then probably it's not individualistic in this way, but it's actually selfish a bit. So in this way, you should change your environment. You should be active in spreading virtues. Doesn't mean you have to brainwash the others, persuade them to accept your political opinions, for example, or religious opinions, but it means to improve it for everybody can enjoy it, share, and can decide and make it better when everybody start to do it, then it's fine. And suddenly this humanism is bringing among all the humanity, all the humankind. So for the future generations, for your family. Of course, main emphasis was suddenly on human, not on the God. It doesn't mean that these guys were unbelievers. No, as you'll see, there will be many religious motives, but suddenly they realized that God is something maybe different that we believed. And maybe God may be happy that we changed again, like in Calvinist or Protestant Christianity. So not only afterlife in heaven or hell is important, but it's also very important to create better life in this world. Because this is also the way how you make. So it's, for example, very easy, as you see these days, guys, that it was very bad for many people to study at home only. Then maybe you had some better environment at schools, for example. And this is the thing, if you improve it in your homes, you help your parents, for example, your siblings, that it improves, everybody's life improves. Okay, cooperation better than argumentation. Okay, than arguments. Okay, there was belief that also people are capable. Many of you probably were even depressed and sad that without social contacts and you are locked in interiors. But this is that we believe. People believe, actually, I like this humanistic philosophy. So in this way, believe that you are strong in this way, that you are capable of changing a lot, and with that their brain, with your brains, your abilities and your knowledge can really change a lot. And if you didn't believe, you don't have self-confidence, let just let it be. Just throw it somewhere and have this confidence, because I can see even from my teaching practice that people are, if they start working hard, if they change their maybe bad customs, bad habits, so you can improve and be much better even than us, of course. Okay, so this means that humans have power to improve and achieve progress. You can do that. So this is belief. What can it help you? How can you help? How can you get better by yourselves? Knowing the nature, why? Only for hiking to have to be physically strong and so on. But also you need to understand it because it can help you with sciences. You want to understand biology, anatomy, you need physics. To understand physics, you need mathematics. Okay? You want to change it because still the environment and politics is bad. You need to know history. History without not knowing geography is like only ideas, You cannot bring in it practice. You want to read other books without languages, without Latin and Greek or Arabic and French and English for you. So this is all the thing that scholarship as education and schools can bring you a lot of things that you may change yourself. That's why I studied gymnasium, that is this school in Athens, in ancient Athens. Suddenly, our school that used to be burger school, schoola, burger, it's actually Latin word from Roman period, but gymnasium, it started to be called in the 16th century. Our school, already in the 16th century, in the big towns, free towns, these schools for burghers, for merchants from towns started with gymnasiums, according to Greek academies, the same thing. Generally, humanism is a lot about individualism, but not this only selfish one, but this individualism that you should get better and then you can maybe help the others. Okay, you cannot complain when you don't get better. You can complain, but if you got bad marks, probably as the result of your laziness, whatever, so probably will not change anything. So every time when you want to change environment, start changing yourselves. Okay, including everything. But on the other hand, strong secularism, this is probably first time we mentioned this word secular, that will be modern again in 20th century. It means secluded, secluded life from the church. That people start to separate their faith, their religion from everyday life. If you know that there are a lot of questions and debates about abortions, for example, about contraception, sexual life, family life, and suddenly in many countries they start to even it started with humanism that probably church is not capable of these things, especially entering lives of those who, for example, are atheists or at that time have different opinions. So maybe let's say at that time, church should not interfere in education. And in many countries, including in here, many of the schools were changed into more secular the town folks. Instead of having teachers, priests, only priests, they start to invite scholars from academies, universities. John Amos Comenius was teaching in Sarospatak in Hungary. And he was not actually he was a priest. He studied theology, but he was not teaching theology, not religion. He started teaching about geography, history, languages, especially about natural sciences, about mathematics, the methods of what they use, and so on. And this was something that church could not interfere, and it happened very often. Again, couple of times. So secular, it means that the state and let's say education is separated from the church. The church cannot interfere with so much, but lasts for centuries. And today you have like a religious or Catholic education at schools. The other thing is materialism. Materialism, not in the way that was used like maybe a couple of decades ago, in terms of lust for property and money and so on, but materialism in kind of philosophical way that you'll learn at civic education, philosophy, that is idealistic and materialistic philosophy. These two philosophies are based upon principle that the matter, mota, is the basic, or there is some spirit. Okay, so more spiritual soul, let's say, and influences more of the things. And this humanistic philosophy brought up this materialism base. It doesn't mean that those people are only concerned on gathering properties. No, it doesn't mean that. But it means that They just understood that the world is like combination of physical, geographical, geological, whatever biological factors. That is matter. That's why materialism. And if you want to know it all, yeah, you may have some great brains, but doesn't mean that the soul. Okay, and these things are actually very contradictory to all the parts. Okay, let's move to Renaissance because in Renaissance we had many of the things that I explained, so you'll see a lot of examples from original presentation that is not mine. In Middle Ages we have a scene of crucifixion of Jesus Christ. This is probably illumination, a manuscript from a book, seems to be either Italian or maybe French or even maybe Anglo-Saxon. That is like very stylistic with a lot of ornaments. It's of course two dimensions, 2D. And just to fill the empty places, you have some like archangels, some bird, a lion, and oxen, some oxen in here. Now, suddenly we have the same scene coming from Renaissance art. Complete the same scene, crucifixion of Jesus. But what are the differences? Jesus is much smaller because there is huge monumental architecture around. What type of architecture? My first question. When you see Corinthian, Ionic order, it's Greek ancient styles. For them, new period, new age, new period, modern era symbolically comes back to the previous golden age of light of knowledge, and how to express it in architecture to put these very popular volutes of Ionic order because it symbolizes golden cut, golden ratio. The other things, Romans, for example, used vaults, Jacqueline. And Romanesque style knew it, but they came back to it, and this vault start to use also something that we said this pillar is much smaller, this pillar is much smaller than this one, and these squares are getting smaller, as you can see. What is it? It is illusion of perspective. That you have one point somewhere in the back, and when you draw it in smaller things, so it creates illusion of three dimensions, something that was well known for Greeks and Romans, but not for Middle Ages, because it was not canon, it was not fashion in art. But for them, it was expression of coming to the perfection that humans can evolve and can make much better, because for somebody, let's say pure Orthodox Christians, this picture can be offensive to the Jesus. It's funny, it's unrealistic. That's why we had this iconoclasm in Byzantine Empire. In Islam, people there, it's forbidden even today to depict God and prophets. Because no human is so perfect to not to insult them with their very bad painting and drawing. But in Renaissance, they start to struggle with this and with analyzing of nature and systems around in here. Instead of like holy people and personalities from the Bible, they're actually real people dressed up in Renaissance clothes of Italy, and some of them actually real people who donated these paintings. Wall paintings, church paintings, and so on. So this is actually very, very very different. And sorry for that. I can read it for you. So can you see the difference? First is realism in Renaissance, then perspective and depth and dimensions. Okay, so let's move on to see. Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci is one of these of many portraits that he himself painted. And you know why it is so important? Actually, the painting is really small, like this one, maybe this big. And the thing is that it's not Virgin Mary, it's not Madonna. She's not a saint, she's not a queen. Who is she? We actually are not sure. She's some unimportant girl from some not very rich family, actually rich enough to have to being painted, but she's a commoner. That's the thing, that Mona Lisa is one of the first paintings of common people. Are you worthy enough to be put on the picture on the wall? Not in Middle Ages, but in here. Again, in ancient Greece, what do you know the names of people, of Olympic winners, of disco ballers throwing the disc? Do you know his name? No, he was just maybe common peasant, but he won Olympic discipline and he was being celebrated as perfection of human, just like Mona Lisa with her smile and shading and so on. But she was Leonardo da Vinci and just dedicated so much time and talent to paint like a simple woman. Probably not peasant, of course. What were the other things in here? Sorry, that he added other things to create these illusions. She's maybe standing maybe next to the window from like some mountain cottage or a house, and that's why we have a whole countryside like from the Lord of the Rings in behind. So that's really different. Okay, Last Supper, beautiful thing. Okay, even Leonardo da Vinci, just like Michelangelo Bonarotti, they had a lot of authors bookings from the Pope himself, and they had a lot of paintings about religion. And in this way, he painted also the Last Supper, where Jesus in the middle is like this point to which all the lines of perspective are getting through. But when you cover this whole part, you know these guys are important but only in here, and the picture is much bigger. It's not celebration of only Jesus and guys, but of the celebration of the building of geometry. Without rulers, you probably are wouldn't be able to draw to paint it, and he did it without rulers probably. And again, countryside in the back. And what is the thing? Jesus in here said, okay, some uh like his expressions different, but the apostles are humans, so they react like in ancient Greek, dying Gaul, angry Lysias, and surprised discussing apostles, students of Jesus. School of Athens by Rafael Santi, another painter from one of many of these painters' schools. Uh, is actually kind of allegory. It's not real because there's plenty of people living from various historical periods in completely unrealistic, not even temple. It looks like school, and he called it the School of Athens. We know it is unrealistic because Greeks didn't know how to build this wall. Romans they did, but we have also like Apollon, maybe goddess Pallas Athena, and a lot of philosophers and great thinkers of many historical periods. But most of them, like 90% of them, are from ancient Rome and ancient Greece. Philosophers, drama plays, and so on. But sometimes you have like Voltaire. Not Voltaire, sorry, but Giovanni Boccaccio and so on. And in the middle, as two religious not religious but philosophical leaders is Aristotle and Plato and Aristotle. Of course, you can find Socrates, Diogenes, and so on. So this kind of celebration that he can dedicate something like great painting to philosophers who were being actually like censored during Middle Ages. Because all of these people, apart from several people in the picture, were pagans. They were not Christians before Christianity even came to exist. So this is like a celebration of it. Creation of Man by Michelangelo Bonarotti is only a very small part. You all know this painting that God is like even God is depicted. Even in Middle Ages, you cannot find any sculpture, any painting where God would be even depicted. And they depict him as they believe that about the skies, somewhere in the clouds, there is like old, wise, angry man that is God, and he's creating with the touching his finger. But this is in from the Sistine Chapel, as you already know it. Okay, graphics was invented in times when book prints were done, and these are some of the parts of Albrecht Dürer, that is from Northern German Renaissance school, and he made about like a couple of hundreds of these wooden or copper plates in which he engraved. So that's why we talk about engraving graphic or graphic engravements, grafický design a rytiectvo, meděrytiectvo, okovorytiectvo. And these plates were used to print ink on the pages to the books because we have very important invention, and that is printing press. Four riders of the apocalypse, Adam and Eve in the paradise, but these guys are actually depicted in really like realistic way, still much better than in Middle Ages. Again, another scene with Jesus, but people dress up like in Renaissance, and definitely some of them are donators, guys who sponsored them. This is one of my favorite comparisons because when you compare this beautiful icon from maybe Kievan Rus or Byzantine Empire with Madonna, Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus, in typical canon, that this artistic style of Eastern Orthodox Church with very small facial parts and also small hands, even babies like depicted like like adult but in small size. But it's contemplative style for the churches for themselves. It had to be drawn like this. The same thing, Madonna with even angels smiling, laughing, and actually this is some girl, maybe even a prostitute from Florence that stood as a model for I think there's also Leonardo da Vinci in here. So completely the same scene, but very different, very realistic, with shading, with dimensions, with countryside behind, and he need to analyze it. But he again, we had this volute, this snail type, that is one of the symbols of antiquity and of it. So what was these things? Classical themes apart from religion were architecture. That's why it's so monumental. Heroes, but heroes not only as Christian heroes, but also legendary mythical heroes of Greek legends, for example. But education too. That's why they valued it, because they mined it. For example, Masachos tried to make experiments with linear perspective. In this picture, you can see that he was not very skilled at the beginning, and they needed really a lot of practice in it. Okay, so these are some things. Very famous, Sandro Botticelli, the bird of Venus. Uh, she's not Virgin Mary. She's just naked goddess of love and sexuality from ancient times. Venus, Roman name, god of wind, Aeolus, that is again Roman name. Persephone here as Primavera, which is Latin Italian name for the goddess of spring from ancient Greeks. Venus was born on the island of Cyprus from a big shell, naked, and this is so open-minded, so modern, so progressive for those times. Alessandra Botticelli would have been probably burned at stake in other countries for this painting, showing nudity. But for that, it was celebration of ancient myths, of love, of spring, of rebirth, of something new. That new wind is bringing new ideas, new openness, okay, and great development that would come. After Middle Ages, Renaissance would come. This is one of the most symbolical things. Albrecht Dürer painted a couple of self-portraits in which he expressed this individualism, that emphasis is on human, and even human, he himself, he's just like Jesus. Yeah. This could have been like altar somewhere in the church. And definitely he would have been burned at stake for these paintings, even maybe here in Kingdom of Hungary, in Austria, but no, he was like living in these small German cities of Hansa League or in Netherlands that was very free kingdom provinces with elected king. He was not afraid of the Pope of the Emperor, and he depicted himself even those hands, like he's skipping. It's the symbolizes like gestures of Jesus. He saw himself like maybe stubborn, selfish guy, but that was symbolism of Renaissance, that he's almost like as important as God or Jesus to be painted. In this way, if you want to express it that in the way that is not funny, it's not lame like paintings of Sandra or mine or whoever of us who cannot draw properly. So you need to study it first. Everybody who draws very beautifully can tell you that they really need to firstly count like bodies, and it's very important to know that, for example, your face, it's 1/7 of your body, and those proportions are like this. Your face is actually as big as your hand, for example. So in this way, if you know proportions, if you know where are the bones of the hand, so you can just like draw it in different, not in different, but in like better way. If you want to draw like 10 fingers and you don't know the proportion, so the hands are like really big. So this is something you need to understand proportionality and realize that the subject of matter of your research is human itself. You must observe what occurs in the nature, how it look like, if there are any logical, systematical measurements there. So in this way, for example, Leonardo da Vinci, sorry, he had to look for mathematical perspective to give the illusion of three dimensions, and this is one of his hundreds of studies. There are sketches, and as you can see, obviously it's a baby in the woman's, in the mother's womb. So This is something that he need to understand how it looks like. And if you need to study the body, you have to open it, do the autopsy in here. And this is beginning of medicine, modern medicine in here, only for the art. And that's why on in behind in the background picture, you have this Vitruvian man that is like symbolical. Even in Italian 1 euro coin guy, that is study of proportions of a man. If you can like measure the limbs of a human in a perfect circle and perfect square, and it's study of how this anatomy is connected with mathematics and how the proportions are connected with golden cut albo zlatý rez. That was a ratio based upon the number p that you know from mathematics, thanks to which you can count the content of 3D objects usually made of not square but like round shapes, like ball for example, okay, or a globe. And in this way, Greeks knew it, and thanks to this golden cut, golden ratio, they understood that some of these proportions are like ideal, are perfect for the understanding, perfect for like perfect depiction. And in this way, when you take a photo of something, usually it should be divided in three parts, you know, like this one. Okay, the I don't know, the horizon and so on. And when you like divide it, and it's based upon also this golden cut thing, and it's perfect then in the end. Okay, before I go to architecture, I need to check my time. How much time? Okay, I got only like 9 minutes, so I was talking really a lot. So very quickly, guys, because we need the next lesson to move on. I'm not going to show you all the architecture because it's plenty of it. Basically, in Florence, you can find even Renaissance churches that are really unique, like Santa Maria del Fiore. They introduced many things, like restore cupola from Roman times. They added bell towers, like in Italy, but the basic vaults were based upon Romanesque or ancient Roman basilicas. To decorate them from outside like Gothic, they started only paint them, like in Banska Bystrica Turzo's house. There are actually imitation of 3D objects like the bricks in here, and it's common, it's typical for them. Not even here in Banska Štiavnica or in Levoča, you can find even paintings of the family itself on the front side. Sgraffito. It's the original name for graffiti. Many of the architecture things were like common for burger houses, were like city halls, like in Levocha, but even of military origin and had to be very clever and simple. That was Renaissance and Humanism. So that's why here in Štiavnica we got even these fortifications that are more like useful than beautiful than nice. Sistine Chapel of Michelangelo Bonarotti, it's like ultimate thing that would be probably wouldn't be impossible in a Gothic period, and is like celebration of Renaissance itself. He was a sculptor, and again, comparison between Gargoyle and Pieta with Virgin Mary holding her son is naturalistic, humanistic, and freestanding. It was outside in the square in front of Uffizi, the city hall of Republic of Florence. But Gargoyle and the cathedral was abstract, only spiritual, had to scare embedded to the cathedral. Just like David, who was in front of Uffizi today, it's inside, and contrapposto. This position is from ancient Greek because it's realistic that you cannot stand for a long time. You had to change your weight on one or the other leg, you know. So that's why freestanding, proportional. The only thing he changed was that he gave him a bit bigger hands to show that he was very good thrower, like sling shooter, you know. For this, you need to study anatomies and mathematics and bold attitude. Like, I'm here, I'm a man, I can defeat the Goliath, the giant. So naturalism was kind of a metaphor for humanism, that you can change it. The legacy of Renaissance itself was in the very basic and important things. Next lesson, I will start with Age of Discoveries, and they changed many things in here. But together, one important invention was here, and that was printing press. Printing press maybe influence, maybe brought in from China. There are very nice hypotheses. I tell you next lesson about it. But finally, Johann Gutenberg. Craftsman from Nuremberg, he used this Chinese type of movable print with symbols to invent his printing press. And in this way, he also produced his first book that was Bible of this Gutenberg, Johann Gutenberg, and it was actually in German already. So later on, suddenly it became so big. We see 10 million books printed by 1500s, that it became actually cheap enough that it didn't cost one castle but only like 20 sheep, and everybody could read it. And suddenly they realized that stories of Jesus are a bit different than church said, and there is nothing about purgatory, nothing about accepting the king, nothing about some nobility, and so on. So many things, and they really start to change it. So printing made it easier to make copies of books. Written works thus became available also in the spoken languages, which is easier to translate Bible from Latin to German or to Czech, or to study these languages by heart. Of course, so Czechs and Germans started to translate it, and suddenly more people began to read the Bible and start to form new ideas about Christianity. And these ideas were very different from official church teachings. And this is something like Erasmus of Rotterdam was talking. So it was beginning of Reformation. Still that he didn't do that, but the others they did. New knowledge spread it also in sciences and technologies, initiated or helped voyages, as you will see next lesson, an age of discoveries. And more discoveries actually decreased the authority of the church and provided some basement for political changes that needed to be, and either to absolutistic, authoritarian, that king got ultimate power, we have to obey him, or more democratic forms of government that I'm going to show you. Uh, okay, so in this way, only today I added this slide, is that what this legacy of humanism and Renaissance of both antique and Renaissance art, because they're sometimes very connected, influenced Baroque with some features only, but you'll see them with realism and some architecture, but especially classicism, that is period of French Revolution, with so-called empire style of Napoleon Bonaparte, Biedermeier, style in interiors in 19th century, historical styles. Whole 19th and beginning of 20th century, there will be big monumental buildings called neoclassicism or neo-Renaissance, and they were actually copies of Renaissance buildings. You got from Washington, capital DC, down to Europe, to Vienna, to Budapest, to Banska Štianica Botanical Gardens. We have the same style of the buildings, with tympanon, with Ionic, all the hats. That's why it was so important. But even modern art styles in fine arts, architecture, sculptures of the 19th century, because they needed to be perfect, they needed to have mathematics and these analyses of Vitruvian man. On the other hand, that was Renaissance. Now, humanism as philosophy, it influenced the whole scientific revolution coming from here, Renaissance, through the Baroque period with Giordano Bruno and Galileo Galilei and Isaac Newton, coming to the Enlightenment period, či osvietenectvo, with all the invention of mathematical and physical rules. Baroque classic period is also called the Age of Reason, vek rozumu, especially in Anglo-Saxon or America or Britain, with John Locke, with Benjamin Franklin, with Thomas Paine, and encyclopedists from France like Denis Diderot, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Immanuel Kant from Germany, Voltaire, Francois Voltaire, and all these guys providing such a huge volume of information. And again, in this period, coming back to the art of Renaissance and antique Greek and Rome styles. In this way, scientific scholarship of whole and even philosophy of industrial revolution in the 19th century is the beginning of the things that we have today, including TV, your education, medical research, and so on. So historically, for us, both of these they created kind of they affected creation of constitutional monarchies that they learned about in England in English revolutions in the 17th century. Then enlightened absolutistic enlightenment with Maria Theresa, Joseph II here for us with education, but with judicial equality. That was only in Rome and then not again, only in the towns. And suddenly it will be here despite of one strong monarch, one queen, one emperor, but suddenly people are proclaimed equal at courts. That was brand new thing. Then again in the French Revolution and in USA with the War of Independence and creation of United States of America, we have new modern republican governments with elected parliaments and presidential system. So brand new things that completely change the course of the world and history of the world and what we have in here in humanism. and Renaissance, how it influenced all the history. So we can say that it actually is restored and start with evolution of democracy again. Okay, what else? Your compulsory task is, of course, with more people, as I told you. Okay, last minute in here. So don't look only at these names, but there were more of them, I believe. These are some brand new things. So there are three John Green's videos about Renaissance, Florence, and Renaissance, Northern Renaissance. Uh, Actually, original presentation was not mine. I only made some additions to some American history stuff. One of my first from 2010, and one of the last thing is if you're able to search over the Facebook for this guy Jan Kučera, that he added to one of these educational. Myslím, že učíme diepis, but I can send you the link if you'd like to, how you can recognize some paintings and famous authors also of Renaissance, and it can be really, really funny for you. But that is all. Krajina z pána prstov zahalená do jemné svetlo modré mlhy, pozadí Madonna svoj tým, to je Da Vinci. Okay, and in this way, like funny stuff that is in here that you can recognize these guys in here. It's some for some more fun. Next lesson, guys, we are moving to the Age of Discoveries. Takže toto je z mojej strany všetko, decka. Prebehli sme akorát za tú 1 hodinu, takže z mojej strany všetko. Prajem vám pekné, príjemné dni, no a nezabudnite priebežne pracovať na vašom zadaní, pretože ďalšie témy budú mať oveľa viac informácií, mien, krajín, rokov a hlavne tá posledná reformácia bude naozaj veľká, bude huge, takže take your time and stay positive in mind and negative in test. Be the man of Renaissance, be the women of Renaissance, because you may know it all, just like proper gymnazisti. Okay, bye bye, majte sa.